Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Jason Zhang, and I'll be hosting today's session, Driving Innovation for Your Construction Company. We are going to give people a few minutes to dial in, and just hold on tight, and we'll be right back. Again, my name is Jason Zhang, and welcome to today's webinar, Driving Innovation for Your Construction Company. We really appreciate you joining the session today. Before we begin, we want to cover a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a few application widgets. All the widgets are removable and resizable. If you experience any issues viewing or listening to this event, please click on the Help widget, and it will take you to a web page that provides the solutions. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We will try to answer all questions at the end of the webinar, but if a full answer is required, or if you run out of time, we'll make sure to answer them via email afterwards. So please know that we do capture all questions. This webinar is bandwidth intensive, so closing any unnecessary browsers, tabs will help with your bandwidth. The audio is being streamed directly through your computer, so there's no dial-in number necessary. Some networks do cause the slides to advance a little bit slower than others, so if you are using VPN, it's recommended to turn them off. If your slides appear to be behind, pressing the F5 button will refresh the page. Please also note that today's session is going to be recorded, and it will be made available to you 24 hours after the presentation. You can access the recording via the same audience link that I was sent to you earlier. Again, my name is Jason Zhang, and I'm part of SAP's Global Engineering and Construction Industry Business Unit. Presenting today is Lorraine Howell, Vice President from Illumity. Illumity is one of the leading SAP implementation firms in North America. Their main offices are in the United States and Canada. They do have a global footprint. Lorraine has over 20 years of experience in the industry. During this webinar today, she will cover how to quickly deliver innovations to create value for your construction business. Those innovations will include IoT with SAP Leonardo, natural language interactions, and mobility innovations, etc. With that, I'm going to turn the floor to Lorraine.
Yeah, good morning or good afternoon to all of you who are attending. Thanks very much for joining me today. I hope that this will be an interesting discussion and an interesting presentation on innovation, because it is something that people are starting to consider a lot more nowadays, and it's kind of interesting to see how innovation can work together with your ERP. So I hope that I can open up some thoughts and some discussion for later on as we go through this process. But thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate everyone that is attending. My agenda is pretty straightforward. I want to talk a little bit about why one would need to innovate in this day and age. And I think most of us probably already know the answers to that, but things are changing, and I'd like us to just consider for a moment why this is important, and especially within the construction industry. And then talking about how SAP can be used in terms of driving your innovation is the second part of what I would like to talk about, because we all understand that SAP is an ERP, and it's got all of the business processes that supports all of the business processes that we currently run in our businesses. But how does it actually help us innovate and move forward, adopting new technologies and so on? And I'd like to talk a little bit about that and show you some of the services that SAP provides, and then get into the details with SAP's tool set, which they've appropriately named the SAP Leonardo, just to see what is available in terms of moving forward. And you'll see me talking about some of the embedded solutions where SAP their own toolkit to actually develop solutions that are now embedded in the ERP. I'm going to talk about some of the accelerators that SAP has made available through this toolkit. So where you're not just developing things from scratch, but leveraging some kind of an accelerator to get to solutions and innovations quicker. And then we'll talk about open innovation as well in a case where you have special needs that aren't really addressed by any kind of embedded or accelerator that SAP provides. And then I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what your company's strategy is around innovation. In other words, try and get you to think a little bit about, how innovative is your company? How ready are they to start embracing new technologies? Or are you in a situation where maybe you just need to see what innovations exist already and just see how you can adopt those? Or maybe you're in a situation where your own company is seeing a need and you want to innovate to meet that need. So just talk a little bit around that strategy, how you apply that strategy. So specifically, if you have a need and you want to design or innovate, look quickly at SAP's design thinking methodology, specifically for innovation and how that would work. And we'll look at a couple of examples, and then get into Q&A. And hopefully we'll have a good bit of time to answer some questions at the end, and perhaps take you to that next level. So moving on then to the question of why innovate within the construction industry specifically. So probably everybody will tell you that the construction industry, and it's not just the construction industry, we've seen this across other industries as well, but a lot of our industries are kind of in a stalemate situation and are really well overdue for disruption. And the problem is, too, that if you look at the world around you, outside of your business, you'll probably see a lot of disruption going on, because there are companies coming, we call them kind of the unicorns, that arise out of the dust and then create competition for the companies that we have. And just from my opinion, I mean, I'm thinking of companies like Uber, who I can't do without anymore, because it's so easy to get from A to Z in an Uber cab as opposed to a taxi. Don't tell anybody I said that, even though this is being recorded. But honestly, it's revolutionized my ability to travel. Airbnb is another one of those things. I mean, we're looking at just things like Alexa and Siri, being able to talk to devices and get information back that drastically changes the way I live my life. And how that kind of stuff disrupts your business. So the idea is, let's adopt new technology. Let's be the disruptor and not the disrupted. Anyway, so from that perspective, what are these new technologies that I'm referring to? Within the construction industry, there's important technologies like 3D printing, artificial intelligence or machine learning, blockchain even, the Internet of Things, robotics, software as a service solutions, like a whole bunch of different cloud solutions that can facilitate and make our businesses better. So these are the things that are going to help us innovate and change. And what would the reason be? Well, firstly, we want to be the disruptor and not be the person that gets disrupted. But ultimately, we want this to lead to us being more successful. We want to reduce costs, of course, but we also want to be faster, safer, and preferably environmentally friendly. And a lot of these new technologies are going to enable us to do that, and to do that better, right? And that's an important part of moving our companies forward in this day and age. So that's just a little bit of motivational speak around why we should innovate. But now the question is, well, where does SAP come into this? Because SAP is this ERP. How can we leverage all of our investment in SAP to actually drive this innovation? So SAP has brought to the table a bunch of services that are available that connect and integrate completely with your ERP. So Internet of Things services are available out of the box that enable you to register devices, be able to read data from sensors, have messaging services in place to talk to those devices based on thresholds within those sensor readings and so on. So those things exist already, and we should see how we could leverage that in innovations going forward. Natural language, particularly, are ways in which your employees can communicate with SAP to get their job done in a more efficient way. And we'll look at some examples of this shortly. But why is that relevant? Because we know that there are a lot of users and employees today, specifically in your industry, that struggle to use computers or struggle to even type on devices. They can talk to their devices, they can read their devices, but maybe they can't communicate efficiently through typing. So this would be an option for innovation. And then just mobilizing your workforce so that they don't have to print things and can get out to do the job that they need to do with all of their information on their hip, so that they can just look and know what they need to do without having to go into an office and get printed papers and so on. And then finally, and I'm just touching on really high level some of the major components of this innovation that you could be leveraging. But finally, of course, all of this involves bringing data together and then actually using that data to increase your insight into your business, and then also being able to make intelligent decisions about your business, and having that data actually even predict outcomes of certain business decisions that you make, and then be able to react to those outcomes. So this is the kind of stuff I think that everybody's starting to think about. 2 years ago, I don't think people were thinking along these lines. It all sounded a bit like science fiction, actually. We were all talking to our phones already back in the day, but I think a lot of these things were still a little bit science fiction to us, but slowly but surely it's becoming part of everyday life. So if we look at SAP and the offerings it has, we start with the core, right? So everybody perhaps on the call has some kind of ERP, maybe SAP, maybe something like SAP that serves your business today in terms of all the business processes that you manage within the core. So this is anything from procure to pay, order to cash, your core finance, HR, all those kinds of things are functioning fairly well within that ERP environment. But if you look at it just like that, there's no room in there for innovation. Sure, you can build out certain programs to support your business, but it's not really leveraging these new technologies I just spoke about. So we go beyond the core and we start saying, okay, so the core really supports all of our processes, but what else is there to offer from the SAP portfolio to help us innovate? So SAP started some time ago, as you probably well know, acquiring some cloud companies to supplement and to support the core in an innovative fashion. For example, if we look at people engagement, really having a platform where we can get employees to actually, or future employees to actually apply for job positions in our company. Have a recruitment facility that uses the internet and uses the web for us to be able to screen and look at people that are applying for jobs within my organization. Now that's not necessarily in the core, but it is supplemented against the core through cloud solutions like SuccessFactors, or if you're looking at expense management for those employees, or you're looking at managing contractors, there's Concur and Fieldglass, of course. Just managing your spend with your vendors, right? Like we know we can do procure to pay in the core, but we also want to be able to look at catalogs across different vendors and be able to compare vendors with each other, suppliers with each other, and make the right choices around what we buy. So the Ariba network, again, is a cloud solution that gives you that visibility across a network. So you're able to manage that. Customer experience, to be able to see a full 360-degree view of your customer from the original opportunity all the way to it becoming a real customer producing revenue within your business. Again, seeing that opportunity before it is even in your ERP core is something that's essential to many of our businesses. and then managing your forecasting and planning and all of that kind of stuff across multiple systems so that you prepare yourself for the future against your ERP, again, is cloud solutions. So all of that stuff SAP has diligently looked into over the last while and said, okay, we need to supplement our core with these types of solutions. But it still never led to real innovation of things like 3D printing, of IoT, of machine learning and stuff like that. So where would you go for those kinds of innovations if you wanted to go that level? So you could go probably to multiple cloud solutions out there, Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, all of those guys have services that you can tap into and build solutions on, and people have been doing that. But those things are not out of the box fully integrated with SAP. So what SAP invested in and brought to the table, especially with the HANA in-memory platform that they had at their fingertips, was an environment where outside of this intelligent suite, you have a platform where you can actually, a cloud platform, where you can actually build applications that complement your ERP environment. And that's the SAP Cloud Platform that I'm showing here. And embedded in there, in this digital platform, are these intelligent technologies, so artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, big data analytics, predictive analytics, streaming, data streaming, et cetera, a whole bunch of different services that are available in a cloud platform that sits on a HANA in-memory platform that SAP provided. Now, as you probably know, SAP took that to a much further level and started using services and working together with Azure, Amazon, Google Cloud, et cetera, as well, so that they could increase that portfolio to include services that were especially good and mature in those cloud solutions. But all of these technologies sit in the SAP Cloud Platform offering that SAP has made available. And they have actually labeled this tool set of these services that sit inside here as SAP Leonardo. So SAP Leonardo, when they announced it, it sounded like some kind of weird name. Nobody really knew what it was. But ultimately, all it really was a collection of these tools that SAP said, if you want to leverage SAP Leonardo, you can have access to IoT services, machine learning, and so on. Now, SAP is taken it to another level, which we'll look at on the next slide, because this SAP Leonardo toolkit is a toolkit that SAP has embraced for themselves, and they've built solutions on it. So they've built some solutions, which I talked about in the introduction, which they've embedded into the ERP. So this is what I call and SAP calls the embedded intelligence. So it's actually leveraging machine learning, Internet of Things, blockchain, and so on. But it's integrated into those core business processes that we spoke about before, and I'll show you how that is done in a moment. But that's really now part of those core processes. And then on the other hand, SAP has also said, well, we can build those solutions, but we can also put together kits that will make things easier. So we've actually, instead of giving you an end solution that's an end-to-end thing that you just plug and play, we'll also give you kits so that if you want to build a connected infrastructure or you want to connect your people for some reason to manage their health and safety, here's a package that we can provide you in this Leonardo toolkit that will accelerate your ability to be able to do that. And that's the industry innovation kits and IoT accelerators that I've put in the left box over there. And then finally, you always have access to this whole toolkit anyway to do completely open innovation, where you see a need within your organization, you don't see any accelerators or embedded intelligence provided by SAP, but you still would like to solve that problem. And you can leverage all of these services to resolve that problem. So in that situation, you have these design-led engagements that you can then follow to be able, or a methodology that you can follow to be able to do that. So if we look at the embedded intelligence in a little bit more detail, how does this actually work, right? So how is SAP building solutions that include machine learning, that include predictive analytics, that include natural language processing into the ERP core. And if you look at SAP's latest version of S/4HANA, version 1809, you'll actually find a lot of these things have now been incorporated into the solution. So they've built the solution on the platform, but then they've actually engineered it into the core itself, so that it's available there for you. So I'm thinking of things like process automation, automation around things like, and we'll talk about some examples in more detail in a minute, but things like being able to process your accounts receivable payments as they come in. Now, we know that SAP already has a tool to match incoming payments to invoices. But what happens when your customers regularly underpay you and or dispute some of the invoicing that you send to them, but they still send you money that needs to be applied somehow so that you can keep your cash flow going? SAP has embedded machine learning to learn from your accounting clerks to see how they typically handle those disputes, to the point where the system will then make proposals on how to handle all of your incoming payments. So where you've got a multitude of incoming payments, SAP will propose to you how it will address the disputes, and you would just accept or adjust those proposals and have them processed in the system. So automation happening where it makes sense, where you don't need somebody to think about something that they've done 50 times before, and a machine can learn from that pattern. Smart analytics, right? Being able to have the system look at your data and say, based on the data that we're seeing, we can suggest what your influencing factors are that affect your revenue in a particular region. So instead of you always trying to figure out what those factors are, the system automatically can see you have products, you have product groups, you've got customers, you've got sales officers. All those things are influencing factors in that revenue. So all of those things can be suggested to you in a smart analytics way, so that you can just adopt those reports and use them to see how these factors are influencing things like your revenue or your costs and so on. And added to that would even be a predictive layer where the system would actually look at your historical behavior and even suggest the most influencing factors based on history. And then, of course, your user experience we spoke about as well, just having your users, instead of typing into the system, for example, you create sales quotations to your customers, and those quotations have to be converted into sales orders at some point. And typically today you'd have to go into the system, copy with reference, and do a couple of keystrokes before you'd get that sales order created from that quotation. Wouldn't it be nice to just be able to speak to the system and say, hey, SAP, can you show me all of the quotations that need to be converted to sales orders that are due today, or whatever the criteria are? And the system pops up on a list, 15 quotations. And then you say to the system, okay, SAP, can you please convert quotations 3, 4, and 7 to sales orders for me? And boom, it's done. It's so much more efficient, happier employees, and something that's really legitimate, and that's completely possible in S/4HANA 1809 today. This capability exists. So this is the embedded intelligence, the innovating with SAP, leveraging, adopting the innovation that they provide within the solution. Other examples I have here, which because I have a financial background, I'm specifically interested in these, but things like predictive accounting. What is predictive accounting? Predictive accounting is basically looking at all your sales orders, all your confirmed sales orders, and predicting which of those are going to be issued to the customer, which of those are going to be invoiced to the customer, so that you can predict your cost of sales and your revenue based just on a confirmed sales order. And SAP has this concept of extension ledgers. It will post that into an extension ledger, and you'd be able to include that in a predictive margin analysis within your system. So you can actually see what your margin will be without actually having to go back and manually try and figure out which of your sales orders are going to be converted. Same with any commitments against purchase requisitions or commitments that have been put out there for purchasing. All of that can be included into a margin analysis through predictive accounting. And from an accruals perspective, we all know SAP accrues received POs pretty well, right? It creates your accrued liability on every receipt. But what if your purchase order hasn't been received yet? Or what if it's only partially received? How do you accrue for that today? Well, you have to go to the system. You've got to analyze those open purchase orders. You've got to make a decision whether you think they will be received, and then you accrue for them. What if the system can look at your history, decide for you whether they are going to be, whether those things should be accrued or not, and then post that accrual into an extension ledger so that you can have visibility to that as well, and so on. There's a lot of these capabilities that the system that is now provided through innovation in the system. I could go on for hours, but I need to get through this webinar. But these are some examples, and since you'll have this presentation afterwards, you'll be able to click on any one of these links and see a YouTube video that can describe a little bit more detail around how SAP is actually leveraging innovation to make this possible in the environments that you work in today. The Co-Pilot is the thing that I've been talking about in terms of natural language processing. This is the solution that SAP actually released already in the previous version of S/4HANA. They've enhanced it quite a bit, but it really comes as that a processor that's embedded in your user interface that enables you to interact with SAP in a natural language. And of course, it learns your language and the way you talk to it, and all the time will get better and better in understanding what your request is. And it enables you to interact on your mobile devices as well as through the desktop, on the mobile device through iOS apps, and shortly through Android apps as well. It enables you to create notes, do screen captures. I love the screen capture capability because what it really enables you to do is when you're looking at maybe contracts that you have with your suppliers that are becoming overdue and they need to be renewed, and you need to get someone in your organization to have that conversation with the supplier. You can be in the contract, or you could be in a list of contracts. You can actually take a screenshot of that, open the Co-Pilot, send that to a colleague within the organization and ask them to please look into it. When they get that message, they don't get a PDF view of that screenshot. They can actually click on that screenshot, and it will take them into the system, into that contract, and they'll be able to act on that contract right there and then. So they don't have to remember the transaction code. They don't have to navigate through the system. They just click on it and are able to do it. That's embedded in the Co-Pilot. This ability to recognize the object that you're working on, so it knows when you're looking at a material master or a supplier or a customer, and so when it talks to you, it understands that. It shares this across the business. It enables you to create quotations and convert them into sales orders directly without touching any keyboard. And it also has, of course, capability to develop your own interactions. So if you needed to build skills for a custom app that you built, you can get the system to learn those skills as well. So this is it. This is the world that we're talking about when we talk about innovation. Now, let's step outside of the core. So that, to me, that's the delivered, pre-delivered SAP packages within the core. If we step outside of the core and we really want to connect all of our pieces of equipment that are in the yard, or we have tools and we want to be able to track the tools. We have sensors on our tools. We have sensors on our pieces of equipment. Or we want to monitor the machines, the engines on those pieces of equipment. We want to be able to predict failure and stuff like that. SAP has a bunch of accelerators that will enable you to connect your assets, connect your fleet, connect your infrastructure, connect your people and so on from a safety perspective. to be able to build out solutions using the sensors that you have, using the devices that you want, using the thresholds that you need to put in there, the data that you bring in, and the messaging that you need. So all of that can be leveraged through the Internet of Things portfolio that SAP provides. And some examples specifically in construction would be things like tracking and tracing things, like connecting your equipment from a supply chain perspective, from an operations perspective, but doing predictive maintenance, tracking your assets wherever they are, on site, at a customer, in the yard, all those kinds of things. These are a part of the accelerators that you probably should look into and see how you can leverage them. And from Illumity's perspective, we are building our own accelerators. We are currently in the process of building an accelerator which we call intelligent plant maintenance, that leverages a whole bunch of different components of what SAP provides. So there's services around bringing data from machines into the system, being able to predict failure on those machines, be able to communicate back to SAP to create work orders, have those work orders sent out to technicians on their mobile devices, enable them to react and to do their job based on the information on that mobile device, and then give them the ability to confirm their time verbally to that mobile device to say, we spent 5 hours fixing this thing, and have that updated in the back end. So that's something that we're currently working on as an accelerator, which we call intelligent plant maintenance. And then on the other hand, using very similar capabilities, but from a from a safety perspective. So really finding those things that could be harmful to your employees on a job site. Have those things equipped with sensors, have those sensors read into a central database, have that interpreted, and have warnings sent to watches or some mobile devices, wearable devices, that would tell them to evacuate or to respond to a dangerous situation. So these are the kinds of things that you could leverage as accelerators to get yourself one step closer to providing using these technologies and providing a safer and more efficient environment for your employees. And this is just an example of that innovation that Illumity has put together, where we're really taking sensors, bringing their data in, we're interpreting that data, sometimes providing a data scientist kind of view on it to do prediction, or just analyzing the data in a dashboard, and then having that the system register thresholds and send out messaging to these mobile devices here, and then have this conversational to and fro between the device and the employee, depending on the situation where they need to correspond back to the SAP environment. And then, of course, collecting the information that needs to be collected in the SAP backend, so that we can create work orders and we can produce historical information as well. So that's just the environment that we would be leveraging in this kind of accelerator. And then providing the mobile applications so that you're able to use and see, your employees are able to use and see the information around work orders that have been created, and so on within the field itself. And then we get to the last category of innovation, which is really the open innovation thing. And this is really talking about, well, you as an organization probably have a bunch of needs. Maybe you haven't even unearthed all of those, but as you start getting familiar with the technologies that are out there, you're going to get more and more acquainted or accustomed to using these technologies to solve solutions. And what SAP is doing in their cloud platform is they're making these services available, like machine learning, blockchain, data intelligence, Internet of Things, and so on. And this is a growing platform of services. So this is not a static environment. This would always grow depending on the technologies that are being made available in our society. And as soon as we can leverage that in business, we'll start seeing those becoming available here. So in all of these cases, you can build solutions. So you can build an Internet of Things solution. You can build a natural language processing solution that leverages machine learning, or you could build mobile solutions using analytics capabilities within these services that are provided. So if you're going to leverage those kinds of things, I guess the first question from your perspective is to ask, where is your organization? And I've spoken to a whole bunch of different organizations to figure out, where are you in terms of wanting to innovate? I mean, there are lots of people that are just trying to get the ERP to run smoothly and to manage their business processes day to day. But there are others that have moved to a point where they want to reduce costs and they want to see efficiencies. And the only way to do it beyond doing the best that they can with the ERP is to start looking at the technologies out there. So you get people that are really innovators and wanting to move forward. You get people that are the laggards who want to just see what's out there, maybe adopt certain embedded solutions, but aren't ready to innovate. So it really is important to kind of figure out where you are in this. And there's no wrong or right answer. It's just a matter of where your organization is in terms of wanting to move forward with new technologies. But this bell curve is typically seen across most of the industries out there. There are people that are quick to innovate, and there are those that take a lot longer to move forward. But it doesn't mean that you can't leverage some of the embedded solutions that are provided out of the box while you're going through this process of moving your company forward. The other thing is that whole strategy of being an innovator also affects whether, if you're thinking about your company is a construction company, and you're focused on servicing your customers, right? So you might look at this and say, well, we build infrastructure. We're a construction company. We're not an IT building company. We don't build internal solutions. And in that case, your path forward is very much a buy kind of path forward, right? Let's see what innovations are out there. Let's go to SAP's App Center. Let's look at what SAP's embedded, and let's buy the right solutions to satisfy our need to grow our company and gain those innovations. But then there might be people amongst you that say, well, we're not quite that. We want to innovate. We're not that far ahead, though. We don't want to take everything and just move drastically and aggressively forward. But we are interested, and we want to see what we can do, but with minimal kind of development. So that might be a buy and a somewhat build kind of situation, kind of a hybrid situation where you would find the best solutions, and in some situations you would adapt a solution that comes out of the box and do some innovation with that. And then finally, you might be a company that really says, we want to move and we want to innovate, and we want to explore all of the exciting possibilities that are out there. So just show us what we can do, and we will build our solutions that way. So wherever you fit into this equation is really something that you need to figure out from your organization perspective, and then start moving yourselves forward at the pace that makes sense for your organization. All right, and so in both the latter two cases, if you're interested in innovating, but you only want to be able to do the minimal type of development, you don't want to invest too much in internal development, there are express ways to go about doing that. And the express way really is adopting those accelerators that I spoke about, or some of that embedded intelligence that I spoke about before. But there is a way to innovate and build solutions as quickly as possible using an express methodology. And then on the other hand, if you're really innovating from scratch, something brand new, you can't find an accelerator that's going to get you there, you would follow the open innovation methodology. Now, the open innovation methodology really takes you through a bunch of processes, and I think maybe a lot of you have seen this design thinking methodology that was introduced by Stanford University quite a few years ago, and has now been adopted really by SAP, and they've collaborated actually very closely on following this process. So whenever you're designing or innovating a new solution, these are the phases you should go through. And you'll see it's a very circular a process. So you're always coming back and making sure that whoever you're designing the solution for is completely involved in every step of the way as you go through this process. So the explore process is really just making sure that you understand what is out there. And I think that's what you guys are doing here today with me, is discovering what are those things that are available. How are other people innovating? How is SAP even innovating? Let's learn and understand what's possible. I call it the art of the possible, right? But that's what the explore phase really is, and you guys are at least embarking on this with me today, and possibly have done this in the future. In the past. The next thing is to discover what are the business challenges, right? Like, so you don't want to implement a solution for the sake of the solution. You want to implement the solution because it's solving a specific challenge. So you need to know what those challenges are. If you have no challenges in your business, then that's great. But I'm sure just like our company, like any company, there's always challenges that need to be resolved. Now you need to identify, you need to discover what those challenges are. You need to do research with the people that you are solving the problem for, and you need to synthesize and finalize and verbalize what that issue is, what that challenge is that you're trying to do. So that discover phase can be quite iterative, but it is a very important part of the process. What is this thing that we're trying to innovate for? And then you go into the design phase. So now we know we've got this problem that we need to solve, and we want to solve it through this technology. So we kind of figured out what the technology could be. But we may not know all the answers because it might be multiple technologies. You've seen the accelerators I spoke about before, the one that Illumity is developing around intelligent plant maintenance. There's a lot of technologies involved in that. So the challenge that you want to solve, you need to brainstorm what solutions are going to fix that challenge based on what you know from the explore phase. So you do an ideation, that's what this design thinking methodology calls it, but it really is a brainstorming exercise. Figure out, and you go beyond the art of the possible, you think out of the box and you come up with ideas. And then you take those ideas, you select the ones that make the most sense, you shelve the ones that you can come back to later, and then you start building a prototype that you then show your end users for whom you are building the solution, and you validate with them over and over again until they confirm that this solution is going to solve the problem that you're doing. So this is an iterative thing. The design phase particularly is going to be over and over again working with the person that you're building that solution for. And only then, when you get to the end of the design phase where you've got full validation of how that solution should be rolled out, do you actually end up implementing, building, and delivering that solution. And of course, it now is a technical solution that needs to be tested and validated and then finally deployed. But this process, you can apply this every time you need to innovate, and you should be. If you're doing it in a vacuum without your end users, it's not going to work. If it does, it's just pure chance. I mean, I've tried this. I know my ideas sound wonderful to me. They don't sound wonderful to my end users, and that's the only way I get them involved is by validating this with the end user time and time again. So under these circumstances, you can then go off and build solutions. So examples here are building solutions on using things like mobile computing, machine learning, Internet of Things, analytics, those things that we spoke about before. And here are some examples of things, and we've got people that are attending today on this webinar who have leveraged some of these solutions. So just building out mobility, some of the capabilities to make your workforce mobile, right? Being able to capture data at the time that data needs to be captured, not afterwards in the office, right? In the field, being able to relay information directly into a mobile device so that you can respond and react to it. Being able to speak to your mobile devices. Be able to speak to the solution that you're building, so that you're facilitating and making that user experience so much better. I'm just reiterating what we talked about before, but this is the kind of stuff that you can do through an open innovation platform. And then also being able to leverage some of those accelerators to build that safety environment or that maintenance environment that will enable your business to operate better. And then just leveraging and improving your UX technology. So underneath all of these capabilities that we talked about here, underneath all of this, I'm just going through the slide again, is this ability to improve your user experience. So even though you're improving the process by leveraging IoT and analytics, ultimately you're also improving the user experience. And that's really through Fiori or through some kind of a mobile solution that will make their lives better. And in any one of these situations where you're just looking at the user experience, you're going through this whole iterative process again, right? Defining your business challenge, choosing the technology that you're going to use to improve the user experience in this case, doing the brainstorming, building your wireframes, validating that solution, and then coming back and back until you get a solution that works for everybody. So we've applied this kind of thing specifically to UX only, so without even leveraging IoT or machine learning or big data analytics or anything like that, just purely to change the user experience on your ERP itself. This kind of solution will work for you as well. And this is innovation, right? So it's really taking that annoying job of having to print your work orders, remembering reason codes, going back to the office to find permits, having no real-time access to historical data, and so on and so forth, being able to always having to write your confirmation of your time down and get someone else to enter that for you and so on, have that all available on a device that you can do everything in one place. This is where you can also leverage innovation. So prior to this, I was really talking about the services that SAP provides on the SAP Cloud Platform. From a UX perspective, you can also innovate, but just directly on your ERP, leveraging some of the UX capabilities like Fiori and mobile solutions. So in summary, as I spent 45 minutes really just going over the types of innovation that you can do and looking at how SAP enables you to do that innovation. So if we go back to the agenda topics, right, why should you innovate? We spoke about being the disruptor and not be the disrupted, but also, of course, to improve efficiencies and reduce costs within your business. Using SAP to drive your innovation, how can you use SAP? Well, SAP has this intelligent enterprise where the tools and services, including the ability to improve your user experience, are available for you to just leverage to improve and to innovate within your organization. What is SAP Leonardo then? SAP Leonardo is really a tool set that comes in three flavors. One is where the tool set has really been leveraged by SAP to deliver products within the ERP itself. That's the embedded solutions we spoke about. It's also the accelerators, so where SAP's taken the tool set and packaged it so that you can pick up the package and then use that package to accelerate some of your enhancements or your innovations. And then finally, where you're just using the toolkit itself to do your own open innovations. So that's what Leonardo is. It's really a combination of these three types of solutions that you can leverage. And then what is your company strategy? Try and figure out, are you an innovator or a lagger? And no judgment on whether you're the one or the other, but do understand where you are. And if you are an innovator, wonderful. Go ahead and innovate. Do open-led innovations. Embrace the accelerators. If you're a lagger, look at the products that SAP has that are embedded. Look at some of the innovation kits and see if you can at least leverage them with minimal development and start moving your company forward. And then finally, using the design thinking methodology, Even if you're a lagger and aren't innovating with all of these new services, leverage the design thinking the methodology to at least, at minimum, improve your user experiences across the board. So make sure that your end users in every parts of your company are actually enjoying their experience with SAP. If they're not today already, there are tools like the Fiori experience, like SAP Screen Personas, like other mobile services, including the ability to build apps on your iOS devices and your Androids. Leverage that to at least make that a starting point for innovation in your organization. That, I think, is where what I wanted to achieve today. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. I always talk too much, and in these kind of webinars, I get to talk a lot because nobody can interrupt me. But it's your turn now, and I hope there are some questions out there that I can attempt to answer.
Thank you, Lauren, for sharing your expertise. I would like to let everybody know that the floor is now open for questions. Since the audio is streamed directly from your computer, you might not be able to ask questions via the audio, but need to enter them in the Q&A widget. Also, as I mentioned before, the recorded session will be sent to you in 24 hours, along with the PDF version of the deck Lauren used today. So feel free to share them with anyone who wasn't able to join today. If you don't have any questions today, you will be able to find Lauren's information in the speaker bio session. It's also in the deck, the last slide of the deck that will be sent to you. So far we don't have any questions. I think that Lauren did a fantastic job explaining this. Like I said before, if you change your mind, if you think of any further additional questions after, please feel free to reach out to Lauren or myself. And with that being said, thank you again for joining today's session, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Lauren. And we'll go ahead and end our webcast now. Thank you.
Thank you.